Modern war history is a graveyard of perfect plans that died in the mud. But no invasion has ever face-planted quite as hard as the Kremlin delusions cooked up for this summer. Those thick red arrows Moscow drew across maps promised easy wins in Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and also Zaporizhia. They spent months prepping for this supposed knockout blow. They hoarded trainloads of ammo and sent in massive armored units straight to the front. Their math said it was only a matter of time before Ukraine lines shattered beneath that heavy steel storm. But right now, a nightmare is unfolding that terrifies Russian troops more than anything else. Ukraine did not just survive that massive initial shock. It rose up to launch a counteroffensive that changed everything, dragging the Russian military into a hellish dead end. This turnaround created a breakthrough on the front line, unseen since 2023. It basically paralyzed the advance of the Russian war machine, once considered totally unstoppable. Official reports from Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky confirm that this collapse is very real. Since late January, 480 square kilometers of land have been reclaimed across the southeastern and eastern battle lines. This number is not just some boring statistic. It represents the systematic recapture of entire regions that had been lost, had been occupied by Russia for months. 8 settlements in Dnipropetrovsk are finally free again. 4 more villages were liberated in the Zaporizhia region. That is 12 villages back under the blue and yellow flag. And all this happened exactly when Russia was trying to keep its spring offensive alive. The most shocking part of Syrsky's statement was this: they won this ground through coordinated operations by airborne units and supporting forces. Basically, Ukraine used drones to wreck Russian defensive positions, then sent infantry to clear out the leftovers. This was a calculated strike, not a panic move, and it was devastating. Data from the Institute for the Study of War reveals the massive scale of failure. The Russian army crawled forward only 23 square kilometers along the entire front during March. For perspective, back in January, that number was 319 square kilometers. By February, it crashed to 123. By March, it fell to almost 0. This is the lowest advance since September 2023. An army with the world's biggest artillery stockpile, losing over 1,000 soldiers a day and burning tens of thousands of shells every month, has completely stalled out. There is only one reason for this sudden pause. Ukraine counterattack forced Russia to hide in a hole instead of attacking anyone else. President Zelensky confirmed this using his own intel and British MI6 reports. The Russian lines are finally starting to buckle. It is the best moment for Ukraine in months. Zelensky wasn't just dreaming. The hard data proves he was right. Moscow's big March push was completely crushed by the actions of the Ukrainian military. Let's look at how the Institute for the Study of War made it clearer. Their latest daily update says it all. Ukrainian counterattacks in Huliaipole and Oleksandrivka have left the Russian command in a total mess they can't handle. That word dilemma is doing a lot of work. Russia is literally trapped between 2 fires. They want to push east towards Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, but they must scramble to defend what they are losing in the southeast. This was the plan to derail Moscow's offensive, and it worked like a charm. But stick with me, because the story gets even better. Because it's not just their battle plans that are crumbling. Soldier morale has totally imploded. Even the partisans are noticing. Russian soldiers are sabotaging their own gear just to stay away from the front lines. They are trashing engines. They are draining fluids. They rip out wires and fuel lines right before they have to leave. This isn't just one guy. It is now a widespread habit in the 255th Motorized Rifle Regiment. Even the officers are looking the other way, because they know where those men are going. The front is a lot scarier than any jail cell. This isn't just a few bad apples. It is a total systemic failure. And there is another layer that is even more shocking. Some kids born and raised in Russia are now fighting against Putin on the side of Ukraine. A young guy named Reagan left his easy life in Europe for the Free Russia Legion. He signed up right after the horror at Bucha. "I knew this was wrong, and I had to help the Ukrainian people," he says. Now he is an electronic warfare specialist. He tracks down Russian troop positions and hands that data straight to Ukrainian commanders. Their mission is simple: take down the Putin regime. Reagan's plan is simple. It's about 1,000 small, painful cuts. Everyone does their bit until the final blow lands. There are now 3,000 Russian volunteers fighting for Ukraine. That number shows you just how bad the moral decay really is. The daily body count tells the same story. Ukraine's general staff says Russia lost 940 troops on April 6th alone. From the Ukrainian side's view, total Russian losses since the start have reached 447,390 personnel. These numbers are proof of an army in total collapse. Honestly, there is a whole lot more to this mess. If you like deep dives like this one, hit subscribe so you do not miss what we uncover next. Let us keep going, because the Kremlin manpower crisis is way worse than they let on. Their ability to plug these holes is basically hitting zero. Russia is burning through 1,000 soldiers every single day. But their training camps? They only handle 30 to 40,000 a month. The whole system is teetering on a knife's edge. It gets worse. New recruits are getting sent out after just 5 days of training. Compare that to Ukraine, where recruits actually get 51 days of prep. That legal 4-month training period in Russia? It only exists on paper now. Prisoners get 10 to 15 days if they are lucky. Mercenaries dragged in from Nepal, Iraq, and Africa? They are hitting the trenches without knowing a single word of Russian. One guy from Burundi ended up in a camp without knowing he even signed up. That is pure desperation. Their army is literally scraping the bottom of the barrel. But they are not just relying on random foreign recruits. The North Korean troops are the darkest part of this entire collapse. Over 14,000 of Kim Jong-un's men have arrived since late 2024. And what happens to them is absolutely brutal. South Korean intelligence reports are painting a grim picture. Around 6,000 North Koreans have been killed or badly wounded. That is nearly half of their entire force gone. The British Ministry of Defense says it was a massacre. Most of them died in the mud. During high-speed, high-casualty infantry charges, Kim is planning monuments in Pyongyang, but medals do not bring back the dead. The harsh truth is simple enough. North Korean soldiers are just more fuel for the fire. No amount of outside help can stop the bleeding when the system is this broken. Even the volunteer system is failing. By 2026, sign-on bonuses hit 3 million rubles. That is roughly $30,000. We are looking at a 400% jump in 1 year. But cash does not matter when the coffins keep piling up in the villages. People realize 3 million rubles is not much use when you are 6 feet under. The supply of fresh bodies has finally run dry. Recruitment is down 22% compared to this time last year. The barracks are empty. The math just does not add up anymore. Putin's goals for 2026 are basically toast. Taking Slovyansk and Kramatorsk? That is just a pipe dream at this point. That big push on Zaporizhia has completely blown up in their faces. Russia is shrinking, not growing. Even Syrskyi sees the writing on the wall in Pokrovsk. Ammo and supplies are flooding in to shore up the Ukrainian lines. Ukraine isn't just holding the fort, they're pushing back and gaining ground. Now, let's look ahead together at where this war is actually headed. Every sign says Ukraine won't just stop at crushing Russia's spring offensive. Come summer, Putin's reality check is going to be a lot more brutal. It'll make the failed spring push look like a walk in the park. Let's start with the crumbling state of his alliances. Iran, Moscow's main gunrunner, is a bit busy with its own mess right now. US and Israeli strikes on Iran have totally wrecked the supply chains. That includes all those Shahed drones and missiles Tehran was shipping north. Putin is about to lose his most reliable delivery route for weapons. But Iran's trouble is just one thread pulling in Putin's fraying network. Assad's done in Syria, and Maduro is barely hanging on in Venezuela. Russia couldn't send real military help to a single one of them. So much for those big strategic partnership deals they all signed. The message to Putin's few remaining friends is pretty loud and clear. Russia's promise of protection isn't worth the paper it's written on. Now he's basically down to China and North Korea. You and I have already seen what North Korea is bringing to the table. Thousands of fresh troops and millions of rounds of artillery ammo. But the bill for that support is coming due. With 50% casualties, those North Korean troops aren't lasting long. China, though, is running a different set of numbers. Beijing is being very careful not to ship weapons directly. Seeing the US and Israel dismantle Iran really rattled Beijing. Iran showed that the US can delete command centers at will. They can pick off missile launchers and bunkers with scary precision. She knows that making a move on Taiwan would end exactly like that. Every single one of China's 1,550 missile systems is already targeted. They're all sitting right at the top of the US hit list. Iran taught Xi another very important lesson. The US prefers hitting the archer, not the arrow. That means targeting the launchers, the hubs, and the people in charge. Beijing clearly took that lesson to heart. For now, they're staying far away from openly helping Moscow. Long story short, Putin's global support is getting hammered. And that is going to hurt Russia's firepower where it counts. Their slow crawl might just stop once Iranian supplies dry up. Factor number 2 is the massive manpower crisis. Russia is currently burning through 1,000 soldiers every single day. Training is down to 5 days and the volunteer pool is empty. Keeping a summer offensive alive is now just mathematically impossible. If Ukraine keeps taking out 40,000 Russian troops a month, the momentum on the front is going to shift toward Ukraine. We're looking at that total shift within the next 6 months. Factor 3: Ukraine is winning the tech race. Reports from Kyiv say unmanned ground vehicles are everywhere now. They handle 90% of the military's logistical grunt work. This past January, the Army hit a massive record. 7,000 operations, all carried out by these ground robots. Imagine robots with machine guns and grenade launchers. They can hold a trench solo for 45 days. Last summer, a kamikaze robot packed with explosives took a trip. It rolled 20 kilometers just to level a Russian base. One drone operator from the Airborne Brigade described it perfectly. The front line looks exactly like a Terminator movie. A robot rolls up to you, and you're just helpless. First time ever, Russian troops surrendered to a metal machine. Not sci-fi, just the reality of 2026. Commander Andriy Beletsky says we're seeing a brand new revolution. It's happening right alongside the massive aerial drone boom. He predicts these ground bots will flip the entire script. Eventually, they'll just replace most of the actual human troops. Ukraine isn't just keeping this tech for their own fight. Zelensky signed 10-year defense deals with the Gulf countries. We're talking big names like Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They'll buy cheap Ukrainian drones to hunt down Iranian shaheds. Imagine using Ukrainian gear to swat Iran's toys out of the sky. Ukraine is now an arms exporter during a war. Wild, right? It really kills Putin's imminent collapse narrative, doesn't it? The fourth factor? Ukraine's morale is basically unbreakable. Zelensky's grit and the army's resolve haven't cracked once. The people are still resisting, and they aren't slowing down. If anything, they've only gotten more stubborn with time. Zelensky's winning Nobel nods and speaking to world leaders. His approval ratings are the gold standard for global politicians. When you add it up, the system starts to crumble. This summer, Putin might have to pull his troops back. We're talking a massive chunk of his army just leaving. That's not a guess, it's just basic math at this point. Now, Putin is staring down two very bad choices. Either declare a second mobilization or just give up. And that's when the ghost of 2022 returns. Remember that last mobilization? It was a total social disaster. It caused the biggest shock in Russia's recent history. When 300,000 men were called, panic set in. The data from 70 countries shows a total exodus. 650,000 Russians fled and never looked back. They ditched everything since February 2022 to escape. Most were the young, smart professionals Russia actually needs. Back in Russia, the reactions were just as fierce. Over 1,300 people were dragged away during protests in major cities. Putin first called those leaving traitors, a natural cleansing of the land. But that brain drain punched the Russian economy right in the gut. The economy was already gasping for air from the war. Now, a second mobilization is replaying that nightmare, but much worse. See, back in 2022, folks still bought the quick war lie. By 2026, nobody is falling for those fairy tales anymore. Announcing a second draft will spark an even bigger rush for the exit, leading to a deeper crash and way more fury than last time. With a 3.4 trillion ruble hole in the budget already, this move might just give the whole country a heart attack. Skip the draft and the entire volunteer military system just falls apart. Either way, Putin is staring down a total disaster. And the scariest warning signs are popping up right inside Russia. Public support for the war is quietly rotting away like an old fence. Levada Center polls from February 2026 show a grim reality. Support for the invasion has slid to 72.2%. But the real shocker from the survey was what people said about peace. In February 2026, 67.2% of those polled said peace negotiations should start. Only a few want to keep fighting, with that number falling to 24.3%. That is the lowest support we have seen since this started. Maybe the Kremlin is starting to prep everyone for a peace deal. They are using their own pollsters to test the waters of society. Naturally, you have to take these polls with a grain of salt. With free speech dead and anti-war talk being a crime, and state media in control, finding the truth is nearly impossible. But the trend is clear. Support is dying, and everyone is tired. The demand for peace is rising. Putin cannot stop this wave anymore. How much longer can the Kremlin juggle these massive contradictions? A 3 million ruble payout just is not cutting it anymore. Over the next few weeks, everyone will be watching this mess. The Ukraine counteroffensive is about way more than just taking land. It is proof that Putin's war machine is finally running out of gas. Once you cross that line, there is simply no going back. TGN put this breakdown together just for you. You and I are here to see the big picture, beyond the front lines. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives. Catch you in the next one.